In 1977, a team of British climbers set out for a mountain in Pakistan called Baintha Brakk. People knew it better as the Ogre because it looked mean and hard to climb. It stood at 7,285 meters high in the Karakoram range. Doug Scott, a strong and experienced climber from England, led the expedition. He invited 6 others: Chris Bonington, Paul Tut Braithwaite, Nick Escart, Anthoine, and Clive Rowland. One man dropped out early, and another friend, Dougal Haston, died in a skiing accident before they left. The team flew to Kabul, hitched rides over the Khyber Pass, and hired local Balti porters in Baltistan. They walked for days through wild valleys and giant glaciers to reach base camp on June 10th. The Ogre had beaten 3 earlier expeditions. No one had stood on its summit. The team split into 2 groups to try different routes. Doug and Tut took the steep South Pillar, a huge wall of granite. The others, Chris, Nick, Mo, and Clive, worked on the southwest flank and west ridge. It was a smart plan, but the mountain fought them hard. On June 18th, a loose rock hit Tut's thigh. It bruised badly, so Doug had to carry heavy loads alone. The other group fixed ropes up steep gullies and snow slopes. It took 9 hard days instead of 2. Nick and Chris pushed fast, while Mo and Clive liked a slower, safer pace. They all met again at Camp 2 and felt like a real team. Bad weather, rockfall, and thin air slowed them. Nick had a bad throat infection. They dug snow holes at 6,700 meters and crossed icy slabs on tension ropes. Everyone felt the danger. Chris remembered thinking how friends had died on past trips right at the end. But the team stayed positive. They used some old Japanese fixed ropes left on the mountain. On July 5th, after rest and more supplies, they pushed higher. Tut and Nick turned back because they were too tired and sick. Doug, Chris, Mo, and Clive kept going. The final summit push started on July 11th from a high shoulder. The last part was a steep rock tower. Doug led the hardest pitches, swinging on ropes to find cracks. Chris followed, sometimes slipping but always pushing on. They climbed 15 hours straight. At 7 o'clock in the evening of July 13th, 1977, Doug and Chris stood on the summit. The sun was setting. They saw K2 and Nanga Parbat far away. It was the first time anyone had climbed the Ogre. They felt proud, but knew they had to get down fast before dark. They started descending right away by abseiling, sliding down ropes. They fixed a rope below the summit. Doug went first. He had to swing across the face like they did on the way up. But this time he slipped on a patch of ice. The rope held, but Doug swung 30 meters like a pendulum and smashed hard into the rock wall. His legs hit first. He felt terrible pain. He pushed off the rock with one leg and knew it was broken. He pushed with the other leg, same pain. Both lower legs were broken. His ice axe, goggles, and glasses fell away. He hung on a rope and shouted, "I've broken my legs." Chris heard the shout. He asked if Doug could take his weight off the rope. No answer at first. Then the rope went slack. Chris abseiled down and found Doug on a small ledge. Doug was calm. He said there was no fear, just a big job ahead. They needed to reach base camp, more than 2,000 meters below, over very hard ground. Chris helped Doug to a better spot on a snow spur. They made a small bivouac platform. They had no tent, no stove, no food, and no warm down sleeping bags. The night was freezing. Doug worried most about frostbite because his broken legs could not move well to keep blood flowing. The 2 men sat face to face all night. They put their bare feet in each other's crotches and massaged each other's toes the whole time to keep them warm. Spindrift snow blew in, but they stayed dry enough. It was one of the coldest nights Chris ever spent on a mountain. Doug thought it was as bad as his open bivouac on Everest 2 years earlier. They talked a little and waited for first light. Doug kept saying he would get down. He just did not know how yet. He told himself to think only about the next few hundred meters, not the whole mountain. Dawn came on July 14th. Chris fixed ropes and went first. Doug followed, sliding on his back or crawling, wincing with every move. Because the breaks were in the lower legs, the tibias, he could still abseil by using his knees and upper body. They reached the snow cave at about 7,000 meters where Mo and Clive were waiting. The four men shared a freeze-dried meal, but the weather turned bad. A blizzard hit, and they spent another night in the cave. They enlarged the hole so all four could fit. Doug started crawling on all fours. He said later it was easier than trying to walk because the brakes were low. Chris helped at first. Then Mo and Clive took over. They cut bucket steps in the snow and fixed more ropes. Doug jumarred up short sections on his knees. The storm grew worse, whiteout, deep snow, and strong wind. On one rappel, Doug did not notice the short end of the rope hanging loose. He slid down out of control, but grabbed a fixed rope just in time and did not smash his legs again. Chris fell about 20 feet on the same rope and hit a rock hard. He felt a crunch in his chest, but thought it was just a bruise at first. Later he coughed frothy blood and felt very weak. He had cracked some ribs and maybe had early signs of pulmonary edema. His voice went, and one hand swelled so he could not use it properly. The team stayed together. Mo lost feeling in his feet from the cold. They abandoned some ropes and used them as handrails. Everyone was tired and hungry. Bonington felt he was slowing them down, but the others would not leave him. They reached tents at the call on July 15th, soaked and cold, but they had milk and sugar to make a hot drink. The storm kept them pinned for days. Doug kept crawling. Chris grew weaker. They knew the mountain was trying to kill them, but they refused to give up. The next days were the hardest. Doug crawled down steep snow slopes, ice traverses, and rocky sections. Mo and Clive cut steps and fixed ropes ahead. Clive led hard pitches and hauled Doug when needed. Mo broke trail in the deep snow. They moved slowly but steadily. Doug focused on small goals. The next pitch, the next camp. He said the pain was bad, but he never doubted he would reach base camp. Chris stumbled behind, coughing and fighting for breath. The team had only nougat bars and melted snow to drink. Lower down, the support climbers at base camp had waited many days with no news. They feared the worst and thought everyone was dead. Nick and Tut had already gone down to Ascol to get help. The porters left too. When Doug, Chris, Mo, and Clive finally reached the shoulder and started the last part to advance base, they found it empty. But the four men kept going. The final 4 miles across the rocky moraine to base camp were the worst for Doug. His knees swelled and bled through 4 layers of clothes. He crawled on raw skin, but he kept moving. Mo caught up with Nick at Ascol and sent word back. Clive stayed with Doug the whole way. On July 20th, after 8 days from the summit, Doug and Clive reached base camp. Doug had crawled almost the entire distance from near the top. Chris arrived a little later, very weak. The team had given them up for dead, but the climbers' own strength and the help from Mo and Clive saved them. Without the teammates cutting steps and fixing ropes, Doug could not have made it. The selfless support of Clive and Mo turned a disaster into a miracle. At base camp, they rested a little. 12 Bulti porters carried Doug down the Biafo Glacier on a simple stretcher made from a sleeping mat and juniper poles. Chris walked slowly behind, still coughing and in pain. They reached a helicopter landing spot. The helicopter came, but crash-landed in Skardu. No one was badly hurt, but it delayed things. Eventually, they flew to Rawalpindi. Doctors there fixed Doug's broken legs and treated Chris's cracked ribs and chest problems. Doug had no frostbite because of that long night of foot massage. Both men recovered fully. The climb became one of the greatest survival stories in mountaineering. The Ogre stayed unclimbed for another 24 years. Doug later wrote a book called The Ogre and told the story many times. He said he never felt scared, only determined. He learned how strong people can be when they help each other. After the climb, Doug went back to Pakistan many times. He saw the high child death rate in the village of Ascol and started projects to build schools and improve health care. He said the local people had saved him, so he wanted to give something back. Doug Scott lived many more years and climbed more mountains. He died in 2020, remembered as one of Britain's greatest mountaineers. His crawl down the Ogre with 2 broken legs showed the world what courage, teamwork, and a strong will can do. The mountain almost took him, but he fought back, meter by painful meter, and came home alive. If this tale of drama, courage, and survival hooked you, push share like button, subscribe for more epic adventure stories, and drop in the comments. Thank you for watching.